What's up, everybody? Welcome to A Kind of Funny Reacts for Rogue One, a Star Wars story. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside the producer/seducer, Nick Scarpino.
I'm one with the Force, and the Force is one with me, Greg.
Almost.
You sure are.
Almost.
You're one with the Heather Gray shirt. Over here, the Pride of Long Island, Colin Moriarty.
Bring back Dengar. Sooner or later.
And over there,
Don't worry.
the pure one, Tim
Let
Gettys.
Tim host.
I thought it was just Tim Gettys for now.
Tim Gettys.
Tim
Gettys.
So here's how it works. This is our review, or spoiler cast for Rogue One. The first part, as always, spoiler free. We're not going to spoil anything. We're going to talk about what we liked, if we liked it, if you should see it, that kind of thing. That'll be very short, of course, and then we'll get into full spoilers. That hopefully, if you've watched the movie, then you stick around, you have somebody to discuss it with. And if you haven't watched the movie yet, you can watch the rest of this video later. So Nick,
Yes.
start me off. Did you like it?
I liked it a lot. Yeah, I thought it was really well made. I thought there was a lot of great things happening in this. It's not that it's flaws, but I think that ultimately, in this sort of order of Star Wars movies, this one's ranking toward the top for me right now. Yeah, for sure.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I liked it. It wasn't until maybe halfway through or 3/4 of the way where I was like, oh shit, this is really good.
Yeah.
This is getting really good. And the first, I will talk about it, I'm sure. Maybe it was that I didn't know the characters and I didn't have an anchor point to it, but I was just like watching, I'm like, all right, cool, this is fun.
Yeah.
But then when it got to, they started paying off on the relationships they've been building, I was like, all right, I'm in. This is good.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think that similar in some ways to episode 7, I think that there's some issues with it, and I actually think there's a couple of significant issues with this movie. But I still think overall it's a great movie, and the fact that I like it so much with these issues, I think is a testament to it. I think every Star Wars fan obviously should see it, and I think it's good for reasons that I think some people won't. Well, we'll talk about when we spoil it, but I think there's some things about it, specifically with the way they build the Empire in the movie, that I think is actually super important to the rest of the movies, and I think was unintentionally. So, yeah, I think it's great.
Tim?
Oh my God. I think it's amazing. I
Yeah.
think it has issues. I think that it's way too long and there's a lot of editing problems and there's more than one scene that I can like point out and be like, that should be cut. And that's not good for a movie of this caliber because it really should just be like
Singing.
trim all the fat. Having said that, are you fucking kidding me? This was great. It was so great. And I was telling Nick this a couple days ago. I was like, he asked me, he was like, do you think that we'll ever have something that makes you feel the magic that Force Awakens did? And it's like that movie had so much hype going into it and so much just like expectations. And we were just like, man, this is going to be amazing. And then it was, and it had that payoff of like, oh my God, these characters and the sounds and these like things that we love so much are here for the first time in so long in the right way. And I was like, I don't think you could ever match that. I was so wrong. There's a point in this movie where things all of a sudden start paying off and I'm just like, I feel like a fucking little kid.
Yeah.
You know, this movie made me feel like a little kid.
Do you think it's, going back now this way, better than Force Awakens?
Yes.
Okay. Colin?
It's different than The Force Awakens.
Sure.
I don't know that it's better. Like, The Force Awakens is just A New Hope again. So I would say that Rogue One's probably a better movie, but probably less resonant at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, and this is always the fun thing because we do so many comic book things. But this is one of the ones, I don't have that attachment to Star Wars. I like it fine. I enjoy going to these movies with you guys or talking about it. Just don't know the nerdy shit like you. I thought Force Awakens was way better.
Really?
Force Awakens, I mean, literally, I was grinning that entire movie, and when it ended, I was like, well, that was so much fun. Now, granted, Rogue One's not trying to be a fun movie, and Rogue One's a great movie, don't get me wrong, but I liked Force Awakens better.
Do you think that's because we already had Force Awakens? Because you've already been exposed to that level of Star Wars in this modern age.
I don't know. I think honestly, it might have something to do with the fact that I was never so into the original trilogy, right? So that like it's like okay, cool, and it's like all right, well, we're doing the Death Star, and this was all right. Like I know, all right. But then like when we get to like the battle scenes and everything is happening at the end with the characters and stuff, I was like, oh, this is okay. This is great, but it just didn't get me like Force Awakens did. I thought Force Awakens was brand new.
Yeah. I mean, that's my thing
with the
too,
exception that it was New Hope.
Sure, but we hadn't seen something on that level, in a very long time. And to this movie's credit, it does a lot of things right, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, no.
It really shows us sort of a part of this world that we haven't seen before. This is a darker, way darker movie. This is not, to your earlier point, like this is not all fun and games. You're not going to be smiling through most of this. In fact, a lot of it's really kind of fucked up.
I mean, what I think is awesome is it makes you think about the ones that we love in a different light.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Like the good guys aren't really good guys, and the bad guys. I mean, the bad guys.
The lines
are
are
bad
blurred,
guys, but
right?
like the lines are blurred, and like the good guys are doing bad things. You know,
Right.
I like that. I really like that, and like I want to be careful without spoiling anything.
Sure.
They did such a good job of like taking the stuff that we know and dirtying it up a little bit.
Yeah.
What I thought was interesting, and I've seen it resonated and responded to online already, is the fact that I really want to go watch episode 4 now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, and now that I'm
definitely.
done, I'm like, oh, I want to see that with this lens on there and know a bit more about.
I just bought
what's going on and stuff.
all 6 of them. Unfortunately, I had to buy 1, 2, and 3 to get the good price, but they're on my PS4 if you want to watch them.
Okay, thank you very much, Colin. That's good. That's good.
Before moving to
Great.
spoilers,
Sure.
I want to say, and I said this on Colin Greg Live a couple days ago, but like this movie is what everyone's been asking for forever, where it's like, oh, the blur trailers for the, it's fan service,
Yeah.
the movie. And that's for better and worse, obviously. But I think overall it's for the better. And there's moments in this movie that I'm like, they fucking did it.
Yeah.
They fucking did it.
You had
Yeah.
said that you know, we talked about this when you saw it and you came on Colin Greg Live, but you didn't say anything spoilery. But you said the whole blur trailer thing, and I kind of forgotten that you had said that until the moment at the end there when I was like, oh, that's like pulled right from one of those blur trailers, and this is fucking awesome. This
All
is
right,
so great.
let's get
You
into
wanna go
spoilers.
Well,
spoilers?
before we go spoilers, one last point was I think that this to me proves a very, very, very important thing, right? Is that you can make a Star Wars movie and skate that line of like PG-13 and R. Like it wasn't. I don't think it was anywhere close to R, but I think you can really start treating, like, if there's one thing I've learned is that you could treat Star Wars, take the fucking kiddie gloves off, and let's keep pushing that envelope, because it's not like we need it to be dark like this sometimes. It can't always be poppy and happy and go lucky.
Well, that's what's exciting about them, what they're doing, right? I always talk about with video games pulling the silly putty in different directions, so
Yeah,
you get
for sure.
different movies. Like all these Star Wars stories, I think are going to be markedly different. And
Well, hopefully the main saga story is hopefully the second main saga story is
different as
a
well.
little different as well.
Sure. Okay. So spoilers then.
Oh my God.
What do you want to spoil, Tim?
Everything. Holy shit.
I mean, there was that's
Darth
the thing for me.
Vader shit at
The
the
thing
end
for
was
me is
awesome.
like the movie had very polar opposites for me, as far as like things that I thought were fucking amazing and things that I'm like I could have done without that. Right? Could have done without a lot of the facial reconstruction stuff that they did with Tarkin.
Yep.
Didn't really care for that. Didn't think it really played. It never really plays. It didn't do well in Tron. In fact, the only movie that I can remember it doing well in is Benjamin Button.
Oh, they're going to
and-
say Fast and Furious.
well, that didn't look good in that either, unfortunately, because they didn't
it
really have
played,
a lot to work
though.
with. It played enough because you were like, I'm crying anyway, because this is a very emotional moment.
When you first walk in and he's got his back to you and you see him in the window, I was like, oh, they're gonna use like little camera tricks like that to use him and not draw out the uncanny valley and and then he turns around immediately and I was like, okay, maybe we're gonna stay wide. Oh, we're getting
And
close.
just sticks
Okay,
on it,
we're in
and
there a
so-
lot.
It's because
Okay.
you see the animations. There's a moment at the end that I almost still don't even want to spoil, but it like that
they've
I
come
feel
this
like
far.
they handled it so much better. Like it's that was just like it was enough, and it was so fan servicey and whatever. It's like, all right, cool. There wasn't animations going on with Tarkin. They just kept saying. And my problem with it, the highs and lows. I thought Tarkin one of the best things about the movie, except for the facial animation stuff.
Yeah.
Like all of his lines, fucking awesome. His character was fucking awesome. His speech that he gave to the other Imperial dude, Krennic, fucking awesome. But I just wish we didn't see his face as much.
Yeah, I feel like some of that there was quite a few things thrown in for fan service, which some of them I think played and some of them I just didn't play very well. The overuse of Tarkin I thought was a little bit too fan servicey. We didn't need that much to tell a story that we were telling, right? Especially since Tarkin and then you also had Vader, right? And then ultimately Vader trumps Tarkin, doesn't really matter. There was that. Another thing that I didn't particularly care for was the score. I did not understand why we didn't use the main Star Wars theme. I just don't get it. And I know why. It's because they wanted to set the movie apart. They wanted it to feel like a Star Wars story, not a Star Wars main saga film. I get that. But I can't. There's some part of my brain that will not allow a Star Wars logo or like to see the Rogue One logo and it not be a main theme that I know and love from John Williams.
See, the thing for me is I agree with you to an extent where I'm like, I would have been okay with it if it was a theme that I felt was awesome, but
Right.
this wasn't.
Yeah, I
felt
don't
like
think
the
it played
score,
very
the
well.
score felt like a Star Wars video game score where it was someone imitating what Star Wars should be.
Yeah,
and
it's like when a cartoon tries to do a Star Wars score, but they're like, we can't do the Star Wars score. We have to
don't
pay
have
someone
a
to kind of do
licensing.
it.
So
That's kind of what it sounds
yeah,
like.
and so like when I was telling Kevin this when we first saw it, it's like the score did feel off to me. But then when it felt right, it felt real damn
parts
right.
of it were great. There was just the part where I'm like, I just want the goddamn Star Wars theme. Like, I don't understand, like, the main theme. Like, why aren't we having that triumphant moment? And at parts it felt almost comical. With how the music kind of aligned with the visuals, and I was like, yeah, all right. And then we got to another awesome part. I'm like, fuck it, that's cool.
Yeah, but then in terms of what you're saying about the whole it trying to separate itself from the main saga films, I like that we still got the A Long Time Ago in a Galaxy Far, Far Away,
Right.
and that fucking hard cut.
That was cool.
That nobody fucking like you expect the title scroll and stuff, even though we knew going in that it wasn't going to be there. I liked how they did that because it was so jarring, and it made you feel like, oh fuck, I don't like this. But then immediately I'm like, we're not getting circle wipes, we're not getting the the wipe transitions, and whenever we go to a new planet, like the text comes up, I'm like, this is an action movie. Like, this is not a type of Star Wars movie we got.
But did it work? Because it was that thing where even me as a casual Star Wars viewer was just like, the fact that it isn't, I wouldn't even tell you about it was circle wipes and that kind of shit. But like with the sound effect, the text on screen, and the hard cuts, I was like, this feels weird. It does feel like not a knockoff in the sense of that, but like an imitation of what Star Wars is. But I understand they want to do them different and make it different, if that makes sense.
It felt like a close cousin. Like, you know what I mean? Where it's not your brother, it's not your sister, it's just a cousin. Kind of looks like you, comes from the same blood.
It's still,
but you can still have sex. Though.
Yeah, okay.
You know
I was like,
mean?
is it okay to
That's
think they're hot?
Yeah. So those are some of the things that for me just didn't necessarily mesh. But again, it's because I think they were purposely trying to set this aside from the Star Wars universe.
Go into the fan service you did like then, because I mean, of course, old butt mouth and fucked up nose guy, they're back. I know their arms get lopped off eventually.
So that that was another nod. I'm like, all right, that's fine. I can deal with that.
That was I like that where I was like, that's enough.
Yeah,
like that's cool. Don't no more. The PO and R2 don't know why they were in it.
That made sense though.
No, because it doesn't make sense because it makes sense, but it should have been implied by the ending. You didn't need to see them. Like you know they're there. So like that was, and Vader I think needed to be in none of it except for the end. That was the other thing that I think was a huge mistake. Like the bath. Tarkin, well, seeing him in the back of the tank, seeing him in the back of the tank is interesting. I was confused why Emperor's guards were there, but nonetheless, like seeing that was
that's how he gets out of the thing.
But like they're not his
put
guards.
down their giant like the poles and come over.
But the thing they set it up so perfectly, and I think they fucked it up in a way with. If the first mention of Vader and you never saw him before was Tarkin's like, Vader's going to take care of the fleet. That was like one of his lines. He's like, I'm like, that would have been awesome, because then you're like, oh, like Vader's going to appear, and then it just ties it into A New Hope, and that would have been it, and that would have been way better than what we had like period. So like that was one of the things where I was like, you don't like Vader actually served almost no plot purpose in the movie at all anyway until the end. So like there was no reason for him to be in it, and that was one of the things that I was disappointed about. Towards the things you guys were talking about with Tarkin, I agree with you. When I saw Tarkin's reflection, and I'm like, that's awesome. Tarkin is an essential character actually in this story because he's so important on the Death Star in A New Hope and his leadership in the Empire. But like they didn't need to show him that much either, and I hate that Uncanny Valley shit, and I fucking hated that they did that with Leia too. Like they like it didn't look right, and they should have just showed her from behind. Yeah. You know, that's all. Again, it's just
she could have literally just turned and been like,
too far.
That's it.
You know, like. Tarkin too far, Vader too far, Leia too far. Those were like some of the things where I'm like, all right, guys, like we don't need to have all this fancy facial reconstruction shit. Like it's implied, and that's great.
But people are stupid, and that's the problem.
That's the problem, and that really is.
I did pop for Leia. I liked Leia.
I thought it was cool. It got me, but at the same time, you have to beat people over the head sometimes. I assume that there's not that many. Like think of new audiences that don't really kind of understand what's going on, and probably even haven't seen the original trilogy, and this is their first time seeing it. Their exposure to this story particularly, and they're gonna want to go watch A New Hope, right? Kind of makes sense. But you have to kind of like really kind of put it out there for them. Subtlety doesn't really play to modern audiences.
When they were running around the Rebel base, that and before 3PO and all that stuff, that was what I was doing. Is again as just a super casual guy, I was looking in the background because I thought it would have been cool to have R2, roll by there with 3PO or something, I knew the timeline didn't match up, but eventually have Leia or anybody back there that I would have recognized.
It was just a redundant cameo.
Where the fuck was Porkins?
Like Red Leader is in it. Someone tweeted at me saying that Organa makes a statement that seems to reference Wedge. I have to go back and listen to that because I don't remember that. So it was cool. There was like little cool nods or whatever, but it seemed R2 and C3PO in particular seemed redundant because of the end. So like because they're there, they're on the Corellian Corvette, or whatever.
We
like,
know
so we know they're there.
We know
like we don't need to see them.
Plus, let's be honest, we've seen them already, right? We've already seen them in episode 7. We saw them,
Right.
So not there's not that. It's cool, it's fun, but it's not hits right in the fucking heartstrings. Cameo. It just I'm kind of with you on that. It got me. I liked it. It was okay.
It's cool, but it's one of those things where the
but it doesn't really serve the plot.
Because one of the things that I think that this, and that was what I was referencing in the spoiler-free section, one of the things that I think this movie does that's very important is it gives actual scale for the first time to the Empire. The scale of the Empire is always, again, implied. It's an implication. You never see it.
Right.
Like, we know that they have reach, but you don't know where they're... Like, we know Coruscant's a capital. We know all these, but we have no idea.
Coruscant in this movie. I caught that the second time watching it. The first time I missed it. Yeah, there was like during the second flashback scene when she's having a dream, and her dad puts her to bed. They're on Coruscant. Like,
right. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminded me of the prequels. I think that's a really important thing because it can seep into the other movies, especially 4, 5, and 6. We kind of get actually, when you think about Yavin 4 and all these places, the rebellion actually looks like it has a much greater scale per capita or whatever than the Empire, because we never see how anything works for them. And in this movie, you see a lot of shit about their infrastructure, which I think is really cool. And I know that's like a very nerdy Star Wars thing, but that's actually like my major takeaway from this is like they actually have incredible power and incredible might, and it's no longer implied. You can see it. And they have an entire planet for their archives with a shield around it.
Yeah,
they have they have a planet where they're just refining materials. They have a planet where, and I'm like, that's cool. Because now it's not like they just show up on Hoth. They just show up on Endor. They just this is where they are. And I think that was pretty neat. And I like that. That was one of the major things about this movie that I think is really cool.
It built the lore in a really cool way. And to go back to what you're saying about why did Vader have the Imperial Guards, I liked that on the Jedha planet when it's just like, all right, cool, this is the Jedi kind of holy space or whatever. That whole thing added so much layers that we didn't even know. Like we've gotten so much from the prequels about the Jedi and the Sith and all this stuff. But
Metachlorians.
And the midichlorians. But with this, it was cool because seeing all the different aliens, and of course it's Star Wars, and now we're like trained to look around and look at all the different guys. There was like a bunch of Imperial Guard looking dudes, but in almost Journey-esque outfits. Do you see what I'm talking about? And I like that because it kind of goes back to, it's like, well, at one time the Jedi, before the Empire was formed, like those guards would have been for the Jedi. So they're there guarding the Jedi like place, and there's like that weird transition period, and it's like until the Emperor is really the Emperor in Empire, like that. I like that there's that transition kind of going through, and just seeing that planet for the first time. It's like it was cool because it wasn't Tatooine.
Yep.
It's not just another desert planet. It's that city we're in had a real purpose, and it's gone, which is cool.
Yeah, it is. Cool. It was very neat. I agree with you. The lore building here was important, and I agree with you that because A New Hope is so contained in a way where it's like Tatooine, some space stuff, and Death Star. I mean, that's basically kind of it. And so like you don't, and Mos Eisley is really where you get the character and like the culture, right? Like the grit and the dirtiness, and you get a little bit from Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru and their moisture farm and all that, but you don't really see it. And they spend a lot of time, like you see people cooking on the street. You see people like it's kind of neat, like. You just throw all of that now that knowledge into the trilogy, and I actually think it helps the trilogy. Not that the trilogy really needs help.
And that's the best thing. As I was telling Nick on the drive over here, I think this movie made the good movies better. Forever it was just like, all right, New Hope, I'll give you it, but why the fuck would the Death Star have that flaw? Here's your answer.
Yep.
Here, in a really cool way that actually makes a lot of sense.
That's what I thought was one of the most genius parts of the actual writing. Right, I loved that it was. A little bit of a surprise to me how it ended, right? How we ending right as New Hope kind of picks up.
So cool.
That was really
what
cool.
I hoped for.
But the biggest surprise was, and it wasn't. It should be obvious, right? It should be obvious the whole movie's based on this concept, but it took me by surprise. And nonetheless, was that he put the fucking design flaw in there on purpose. It was like the only thing, well, not the only thing, but one of the biggest glaring problems in A New Hope. You're like, why the fuck would they build this giant thing with a hole right in the middle that goes right to the reactor?
And the Death Star fucking works from mined lightsaber crystals.
Oh, that was awesome too.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah,
the blast is lightsabers?
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was just going to say, the ironic thing about this, and this is what I was talking about with Kevin on the way over, was that it solves plot holes in The New Hope, or like kind of makes it a little more believable, but there are significant plot holes now in Rogue One as it stands itself. Because one of the things I was telling, not plot holes, but just weirdness, where I'm like, why would the chief science officer or the chief architect of the Death Star reach out in some sort of Princess Leia like to Obi-Wan Kenobi message and give them none of the information? Like the entire movie never needed to happen. Like he could have just been like, I don't might have the schematics, but this is everything you guys need to know.
Right.
You know,
It's
instead
right
he
here,
uses his
just
3
shoot
minutes.
this thing,
And instead
I'm
he
gonna
uses
leave you this letter telling you
It
how to
doesn't
get
make-
it when I could just say I've built in this thing, shoot it down the hole.
It makes no sense. And that was like one of my things where I'm like, oh, this is really gnawing at me, because I'm glad that it makes no sense in a sense, because then we get this great movie, which I think is a testament to how good the movie is, because it still makes sense, but it could have been 15 minutes long, because they literally could have delivered that message and given all the information. It doesn't make any sense why he didn't give them all the information there.
I buy that.
And Kevin was saying, and maybe it's true that like they don't trust him and they doesn't have access to all the plans, but he knows how it works. So he could just describe it.
Well,
It's not needed. It's not
That's
needed.
gonna be a hard thing to
Hold on,
describe,
Kevin's screaming. Use your microphone, big dog. Come on, I'll bow wow wow.
It is a moon-sized base, so it's not like you can just be like
The hole.
It's in the top.
Take a
right,
left at the gray thing.
This one like trench that will take you down. I mean, it's very specific. Like I think that they needed the plans, and I don't think it was as easy as him being like, "Hey, here's the hard drive with my plans. Take it." You know.
I guess. I mean,
Well,
that was the other thing too, is the
I mean,
pilot
that's-
actually physically delivered his message, so he could have physically delivered
But
the
that's
plans.
the thing. Like,
But
I don't think that. Sorry, let me just finish this last thought. I don't think that like right now someone can get plans for like even a battleship that like exists now and be like, "Oh, here it is" to someone. You know,
Well, that was
like,
the whole
that's
point of the
all
planet,
tech
right? Like
protected.
the planet in the place where they store it all, they had to get the giant communication dish to able to send as much data.
Oh,
They made
'cause they were so
they made a
large
big
files,
they made
yeah.
a big point about how big the files were to
Yeah.
transfer and stuff.
I mean, I think
doesn't
that
really make sense, though.
That stuff. I mean, that's the thing, though. Like, you know, if you start really scrutinizing any Star Wars movies, you're gonna start getting to those kind of little leaps in logic. So you just kind of have to.
Sure,
That's where you
well,
have to suspend disbelief.
Sure,
on that.
because you could, to the credit of Kevin and other people, Leia does the same thing with Obi-Wan. So you know,
True.
like, so it's not like literally the same thing. Like she could have literally told him way more. And I know R2 was all fucked up, but they did fix him, and then and it's all
That's
like
true.
So like she's like everyone's a
He's gonna
little
literally-
vague in this galaxy, where they need to be. But the problem then kind of transcends because. The Empire is aware of the flaw and still deploys the weapon, and that was one of the major things too. They know it's not a secret. They know Tarkin knows that the Death Star has a fatal flaw, and
Wait,
the Emperor
well,
knows.
does he?
Yes, because like they're openly talking about it, aren't they?
Not with Tarkin though. Just Krennic.
No, because I
knows.
think
He's
I
trying
don't
to
think
hide
they
it.
know, and he was like, "We have to figure out what's going on with this." Like, but I guess no, she tells him, right? Or he tells him.
Yeah, I thought
tells
that.
who?
Krennic never.
Well, I don't think
went-
Krennic
never
ever
Krennic was
knew.
hiding it because Krennic didn't
never
want
went-
Tarkin to know, because Krennic wanted credit for the Death Star. That's why he went to go see Vader.
But I don't think he knew there was a flaw, did he?
Krennic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he knew that there was a flaw.
He knew that Jin's dad
But
was sending out messages, which he kind of, I guess, put
He's kind of
together.
extrapolated
But he's
this
like,
from
oh
after
fuck,
that.
there's
Yeah.
some
I gotta go back. I
shady
mean,
shit going
because
on.
I don't think he knew there was a flaw. He just knew that there was messages sent out. He didn't know what they were. So that's what his whole purpose of going back to that planet with the data on it was to figure. That's why he was like, go through everything. We have to figure out what he sent out.
Right, but at the very least, I guess it could be narrowed down more. At the very least, that they knew that the plans were out, or something was transmitted about the Death Star, and they just wantonly use it anyway. It just
But
seemed-
all the people that know that blew up though. They were all on the
And they
planet.
also just assumed that it was. They're like, great, everyone has the plans. To this,
So
but
wait a
it's-
second then.
It's indestructible.
As we try to plug or answer Colin's questions, follow me on this then.
Yeah.
Is he sending the coded messages, or not even coded, but like do all this stuff, like leaving a breadcrumb trail, because the guy in the white coat, who I can't remember his name
Craig.
ever, Krang. I'm sorry, thanks for helping me out. Krang is
Bebop
he
would help
goes
out.
there and he knows he's going to look through all the messages. So even if he finds the message, if the message was, "Hey, there's a fucking hole in the top, and take a left and you'll find it," then they'd all know. So he's sending coded messages so that even if they found the message, they wouldn't have enough information to figure out what
There
it
you
is
go.
to stop it.
That makes sense.
That does make more sense. That explains that. And I feel like I'm also focusing on the negative, because there's a lot to, or not the negative, because I don't really even think they're negative. These are necessary things for the story to even work, or to happen.
Yeah, you have to have those,
But
right?
I think one of the strong points of the movie, aside from
Like, you don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, because at some point you'd be like, why didn't he just design it so that the first time they used it, it fucking blew up? You know
yeah,
what
I mean that's like,
He goes in and turns
that's
one
actually
thing around.
a
so
fucking
it
great
just goes-
point, Nick. I don't know. Yeah, like
You know what I mean? It's like he's so smart that he designed
That's
this
actually
fucking
really-
giant thing, and he just designs the first time they fire it up, it just blows up. You're like, damn.
that.
Kevin
That's
says there's
actually-
other engineers working on it that they would
But
figure
he
it
was
out
the
too.
he was the lead engineer though. And
But
you
none of them knew
get
about
the
the
point
flaw?
that all the other engineers were like subjugated as well. Like, you know, they didn't look like they were there on their own accord. You know what I mean?
Sure, but you say one thing and they go fucking
That's true.
squeal on you.
But to Nick's, that's a really interesting point. And to Nick's point, they wouldn't have known about the flaw that he only engineered.
And that's
into
the thing. He said he was developing it for years and like incorporating it into it so deeply that like just to trick everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a moot point, really. At the end of the day, if he had done that, we don't have a movie. We don't get a fun movie. You know, we're going to watch it for 2 hours.
The cast is great. I don't mean the acting. I don't know any. I don't speak to that too well. But I liked the characters, and I like that they all die.
All fucking died in the most action movie way possible.
They're all dead.
I think
you cared about all of them. My thing is when I'm really looking at the movie, and especially now that I've seen it twice, the second half of the movie is what makes it amazing.
Yeah,
the first half 100%. Is kind of weak, and there's a lot of bullshit. The pilot mind reading alien scene,
but the tentacle hentai monster
didn't make any sense. There's a lot of random stuff. It's like, okay, we've seen 13 planets in the first 5 minutes, movie,
right?
And I'm like, this is a lot to take in, but that's what makes the second half worth it. You only cared about those characters because you saw them in all these weird ass situations growing together. And I'm like, that's what a movie is. This was a standalone movie that is way better if you've seen A New Hope.
I think, I think that's the thing too. They could have cut a little bit of it down, but I think it really did build toward that second half. And that second half
is awesome.
Really fun. Like,
honestly, all this shit that was in the trailer promised was fucking rad.
And here's my favorite thing about this movie that makes me love it more than pretty much any movie I've seen this year or ever is where was 70% of the stuff we've seen in the trailer? Not in this movie.
Will you become?
Yeah.
You know?
I rebel.
The TIE fighter coming up behind her and the Death Star looking thing. None of it in it. All the trailers were was fucking footage not in the movie. Thank you. Give me the tone of what the movie is, but don't give it away. Oh, so awesome.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is part of the fun of watching this movie was the cast, right? I think they had a great cast of this. I think that Alan Tudyk, I think, stole the show.
The robot was awesome.
Okay, too.
Hilarious. I think he did a great job, and you can tell some of that was probably improv. So kudos to him because the right amount of comedy there was just mixed in with that. And the two leads, Diego and is it Felicity Jones?
Yeah.
They were great. They had good chemistry together, and it was believable that they had a genuine affection for each other at the end, knowing that, I mean, the second they stepped foot on that planet, they were going to die.
They're going to die, yeah.
So they knew that, and like you see it in their eyes, and they just it worked. That
and the pilot, man, I thought the pilot was such a cool character. Just, I mean, besides the mind wiping bullshit, like I just think like the way that he acted, like it was so genuine of him just being like, "Fuck, man, like." I defected and I'm really concerned about everything and I need to fix this stuff.
Yeah.
And he was like the Donatello type, which is cool.
Yeah.
And
Blind Jedi
my
was awesome.
favorite was the fucking two dudes, man. The blind Force
Blind
guy
Jedi,
and the machine gun motherfucker. The gay couple, the first of the gay couple in Star Wars.
Were they gay?
I mean, yeah.
They definitely loved each other. I don't know if they were gay.
I think that it was.
It seems like that could be a thing. I mean, I loved those characters and I liked. We see no lightsaber except for Vader using his or whatever, and there are no Jedi obviously because they're all pretty much fucking dead at this point. They still work in the magic of the Force and what it means to Star Wars, and I actually would have been fine without any references to the Force and any lightsabers and all that kind of stuff because I think that that's the natural reality in quotes of the galaxy at that point. Like it's not one of these like so everyone's saying may the Force be with you and also I'm like what the hell are you guys talking about? Like that really didn't I don't did you guys care about this until like
Luke shows up.
Luke and Obi-Wan and stuff. It doesn't.
I think that they built that into the movie where it was these religious zealots that were kind of like really into it. And I think that them all being around each other is what was really influencing her. And it's also like that her parents who did grow up in the other timeline, like the Jedi and all the Force, that was real to them. So they would teach her that. But I think that her being in the ship on the way to the final battle and saying, "May the Force be with you," and everyone kind of clapping and laughing even in the ship, that was cool. Like that was them being like, all right.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, it is neat. The other thing that I want to point out before I forget, because this just came to my mind, was we were talking about how the Empire is given like texture in this movie, and like we see, you know, as I was saying when we analyzed the first trailer, like it was cool, like the obvious dissonance between like AT-ATs on a tropical planet and all those kinds of things. Like it's neat, and I like that. This also adds texture to the rebellion that they're not cohesive at all, and they're not cohesive when A New Hope starts. That's a really important point because by the time they retreat to Hoth and Empire, they're not that far removed from almost fracturing and actually giving up. And we don't know that in A New Hope. Like, so this again gives a lot of weight to now the rebellion and their movement because Mon Mothma couldn't even keep them together until until literally the day before the Death Star plans are stolen.
Right.
So that is also really cool. I think that's what's so important about this movie. I think what's most important about this movie is just, again, how it builds into these things and gives, it's what Lucas tried to do, I think, with the prequels, to give some sort of governmental structure to what was going on. And I think he succeeded, actually, in some ways. I think that's some of the more interesting things that didn't play well, like the Trade Federation, trade routes and all. I mean, like, that's not interesting stuff, but it was trying to say, like, this is political. Like, this is a political thing.
Definitely.
And that showed us for the first time that, like, Mon Mothma and all these people have massive disagreements. Bail Organa, going back to Alderaan, where he's days away from being killed. That's important stuff too. I think that when I walk away from Rogue One and really marinate and think about it and pull things away from it, it's always going to be the additive nature of giving context to everything else, as opposed to what is in the movie itself. Because these are all people that are nameless heroes. Like, they're not. Maybe they'll work it into 8 or 9, something where there's something named after them or something. But these are people that just died, doing something that was very necessary. And it was cool to see the rebellion on the ropes. They were about to lose.
What's
and
the line
cool.
in A New Hope when they talk about the plans and she says, or somebody says, like, many
Bothans have died to give us information?
What's a fucking Bothan?
Jedi. Right?
That's in Return of the Jedi for the second Death Star.
What? Okay. I got confused when we talked about this a long time ago. I thought that was what this was.
And again, like we were talking about plot holes, it's like it took them decades to make this, and then it took them
like a couple years
to make the second one, and it doesn't really make any sense either. But
they were building them back.
But
already.
it's so, the movie's cool. I mean, that's like kind of what I want. Like, my takeaway from it is, like, yeah, there are all these issues, but it's fucking cool, and these characters are great, and I'm glad I saw it, and I really liked it. And it gave me, I agree with you. I think it was a mistake not to open with a crawl. I don't like that they're not doing that with these movies and all that kind of stuff.
The thing about the crawl is, what would the crawl be? Because if you look, after watching this movie, I read the crawl of A New Hope again. I'm like, oh, the crawl of A New Hope is literally this movie. Word for word. Like, the whole
about a civil war.
I mean, that's the thing. The crawl was always meant to kind of set up a little bit of the stuff that they didn't necessarily need to show in the movie itself, right? So to Colin's earlier point, I could have seen a crawl, and I could have seen it saying something along the lines of, like, the rebellion is fractured, right? All these dissidents are coming together and trying to figure out how to beat this empire that is growing in power. Because remember, before this, there's still a Senate in this movie. There's still a group of people who are trying to fight against the rebellion, right? I guess it's the same with New Hope, but there's stuff I could have used in there.
Well, the thing is, I think that there was a crawl, but instead of it being a crawl, it was the flashback scene of her being a kid.
Yeah.
Like, that's what the crawl would have been.
Sure, I agree. I mean, the crawl could have been as simple as like, the Empire is on the verge of a great scientific achievement. Blah, 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 blah. Like, they're, the rebellion is scattered, and Mon Mothma can't is having a hard time holding them together. It's not necessary for the plot, but the crawls aren't really ever necessary for the plot.
That's
actually,
true.
if you read episode 1 crawl, it's actually, what the fuck are you even talking about? So, like, but it's just the way Star Wars begins.
Yeah.
But I understand, it's like you said, we said a Star Wars story.
Yeah.
And are we going to get, like, the Han Solo, Lando Calrissian buddy movie? Is that going to have a crawl? No. So I understand.
And it doesn't need it.
And I think my biggest thing is, this movie succeeded.
Hungover.
This movie succeeded at what it tried to be and what it needed to be, and all of those things. And again, it has flaws. It has many flaws. But at the end of the day, this was an awesome action movie that developed characters that we didn't know before, that we loved by the end of the movie, and all of their deaths resonated in a way that I'm like, fuck, I wanted more of this character.
Yeah.
That's great. And I can say that about all of them. And that's super cool, because that's not necessarily always true. Like, the one thing the prequels did was there was some characters that I'm like, oh man, Qui-Gon was pretty cool.
Jar Jar.
Then it's been Jar Jar. Yeah, that Jar Jar guy.
Oh, no.
Well,
I
mean, to like, Jimmy Smits being in it as Bail Organa is a direct lineage to the prequels, and that's an interesting. It's not only Coruscant, like Timothy Zahn kind of shit. Like, that is actually a man that was in the prequels, and I think they're trying to subtly pay homage to movies they know their audience doesn't like, and saying, like, they actually matter. And maybe it'll have some, like, people will be able to revise the way they look at them moving forward. I'll never be able to revise the way I look at them moving forward, but I'm sure there seems to be a revisionist history actually even going on with the prequels now. So
Do people like them?
yeah, you could see a lot of people.
People need to stop.
No, I mean,
we
I
got
agree,
a good
they're
Star
terrible.
Wars prequel. Let's just be happy with it. All right.
I agree. So
Well, and it's funny because when we did the swoop come in and there was all the lava, I was like, oh man, he's got the high ground. And then it was Vader. I was like, oh, Vader coming back to where he got made.
it brought me back to, like, I
That
fucking
scene should
hate
not have been
episode
in the
3
movie.
so much.
Vader's choke.
that was too much fanfare.
The choke line. It's like, dude, no, man. Like,
liked
that's way too fan servicey. In a cheap bad way.
Yeah.
Whereas the
Whereas
Vader
the
scene,
fucking
I agree that if they, it would have been awesome to
awesome.
not have Vader at all until the moment when
Until Tarkin mentions him.
and the light. This
I love the bat scene. I thought that was
It was
cool.
no, it was cool. I'm just saying that would have been a really awesome pop to end it on.
But I also don't think it takes away from the end scene. I think the end scene, the end Vader scene is
When he
what
fucking
we
throws the
all
guy in the
wanted.
ceiling.
I mean, he
Force
fucking
away.
comes in, turns on the lightsaber, throws the guy on the ceiling. Someone blasts at him, and he like reflects the blast and shoots him back. Takes all their weapons, slices motherfucker. It's like that is again that's
Stabs the guy
blur stuff
through the
we're
door.
talking
That
about.
scene, that was the first time in a long time I've seen a scene like that, where I'm like, that reminded me of the first time I watched Terminator, where you see this unstoppable fucking monster, and you know that everyone on that ship is dead. Because we literally know how that fucking ship, we know what happens with the cruiser that launches from it. That was fucking awesome.
It was really
that was
cool.
like a masterclass in how to direct the scene.
You felt it too, like with the mention of the Corellian crafts and stuff like that. With the Admiral Akbar guy, I don't know that particular dude's name, but the where I was like, it became clear that it was the same fight, and they were like, first of all, the Star Destroyer showing up as they're jumping is really cool.
Smashing 30 of them, that was awesome.
Which was really cool, and then Vader doing all those kinds of things because Vader is so effortless. Like people make fun of the David Prowse like fights with Obi-Wan and stuff where they're really bad and stuff, but I was always like, well, if you read it differently, it's that Vader doesn't give a fuck about this old man or any of these people. Like he's way more powerful than them. Even when he fights Luke in Empire, he's doing it with one hand. He doesn't care, and you see that where they're very effortless, doesn't really stop moving. And actually, the cooler part of that, even of Vader, was watching the rebel soldiers trying to get that information out, which was awesome. Like, just take the fucking, and they're all running away, and then you see them all set up, and I'm like, that is the scene from A New Hope, ties it perfectly together. They should have never showed Leia's face.
They totally should have. It was so fucking
It was just cool
awesome,
seeing
man.
her silhouette.
Yeah, it was cool to see the silhouette.
It's the same way I feel about Episode 7,
back.
where I'm like, what they should have done is never showed Luke. Just have a cloaked guy, and you know it's him. And that would have been, or is it? Especially in Episode 7 where it's like, maybe it isn't. It clearly was Luke. You didn't need to show him.
That's a Walking Dead moment. You don't want to do that. That's a bad cliffhanger, not a good one.
So I feel like Leia, like we know her iconic look, even if it was behind, she never hood on and you see her buns, like it's clearly Leia. Because I get the Uncanny Valley shit from her even worse than I got it from Tarkin. And I looked at her and I'm like, this doesn't look right.
She wasn't animating at all. It was just like
no, it doesn't matter how she's animating. It doesn't look right to me. It didn't look right. Tarkin looked weird too because I think they pushed it too far. But I'm like, we got to slow down. Let's not do this. You don't need to do this. Let's leave a little bit to the imagination. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it was a great success, and it makes me because I'm real skeptical of the Lando Han thing. I don't think that sounds interesting at all.
God, it
but
sounds so good.
Awesome.
But
so good.
just because,
Are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding
Harrison
me?
Ford and Billy D. Williams are those characters.
Yeah,
but
it's gonna
now
be hard to
it's
break
very
down.
weird.
I'm not going to be able to.
But I trust in Kathleen Kennedy. I trust that they put those two in a room together and they have that same chemistry. So we'll see what happens.
So for me, it was the scene where the rebels joined the final fight. When I watched the first time was when I looked at Kevin. I'm like, this movie is fucking awesome. And then it just from there just kept getting better. The hammerhead thing that they did,
when he
where
shoves
they
one ship
shove the
into the other
Star
ship.
Destroyer into the other, and then it crashes
Takes off
into
the
the thing.
cockpit,
It's just
huh?
like this is Star Wars, and I think that's the thing. They fucking made a movie that makes me say this is Star Wars,
Yeah,
and
that's
that's
cool.
so awesome. That whole final fight was great, and I cannot wait to talk to Gary Whitta about this because I remember when
Game Over Greggy Show.
he was on the show this upcoming week on Patreon.
Friday night on Patreon.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/kindafunny.
When he came years
YouTube
ago
next week. Yeah.
on Game Over Grady's show, we were talking about Star Wars, and I think just Star Wars was the topic. And he was talking about how his favorite thing in the entire trilogy is at the end of Jedi when there's like the three fights going on at once. There's on land, there's in space, and all that stuff, and they all work together in a way that wasn't direct, but these people needed to achieve this in order for these people to do that, and whatever. And like watching this movie, I'm like, oh yeah,
He's
like,
doing it, yeah.
This is happening.
That classic
Trying to
Lucas
upload
three
the-
planes
yeah.
action happening at the same time.
And I thought it was masterful. I thought that how they all interacted, how even on land, the multiple storylines of the different cast members. Yeah, granted, there was a bunch of bullshit of like, you need to climb this tower, and
there was
this
the
weird fucking door
climb
that
the
opens.
tower. Then there was the
Sphincter.
Doc. We have to go 88 miles an hour, so you have to tether this thing to the fucking. The
Clock tower.
The clock tower.
But I
And then,
loved it, though.
they even had the thing where he's like, it's not long enough. And I'm like, oh my God, that was come on, guys.
Yeah,
It's
but
a little too much.
I loved it. I thought that that whole thing was paced really well.
Yeah.
Tim, tell us about our sponsor.
This Kind of Funny Reacts is brought to you by Casper Mattresses. Greg,
Yeah.
I got a Casper mattress. Me and Gia just moved in.
Yeah, you did.
together.
So what are you doing on that mattress?
Sleeping a lot. It's been great. It's been fantastic. There's the two different types of
Foam.
A foam going. There's the memory foam. There's just the right amount of bounce
Yeah.
and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
Oh, I know about bouncing
we've
on a
read these ads
mattress.
before. We know what's up with that. Casper mattress
They called it
provides
2 times the
resilience
technology once, and I lost my mind.
and long-lasting supportive comfort. Casper mattress is one of a kind, a new hybrid mattress that combines premium latex foam with memory foam. That's what
So
we were
much
talking about.
foam.
That's what we were talking about. Obsessively engineered mattress at a shockingly fair price. Just the right sink, just the right bounce. That's what I was talking about. They come together for better nights and brighter days. You can get a risk-free trial and return policy. Try sleeping on a Casper mattress for 100 days. You get free delivery. If you don't like it, you can send it right back. And we got a deal for you. You can go to casper.com/kindafunny and use code kindafunny. You get $50 towards any mattress. Mattresses are usually really expensive in America.
Oh, no, I know.
This
I know.
one, made in America,
Yeah.
cheaper than all the other ones.
Wow.
We're talking $500 for a twin, $950 for king.
You
I
gotta
went
get that
queen.
king. Get
I
the
went
king.
queen. I should have went king.
Why did
I'm
you
gonna
go
be honest
queen?
with you?
You
I
got
don't
$50
know.
off.
Yeah, I fucked up.
Stupid. That was a dumb move. Send it back. Get the queen. Get the king.
Casper.com/kindafunny. Use promo code kindafunny. Thank you very much, Casper, for sponsoring this video.
So any closing thoughts? Or are we good?
I love this movie.
We're good. I
Good movie.
think it's a great movie, and I think people should definitely go see it and really soak it up because I don't know that they're all going to be this good. You know?
That'll be the
I hope
interesting
so.
thing. That'll be interesting to see if when there's a miss again from the new regime here of Star Wars, who seems to be doing everything correctly.
And let me leave with this because this is interesting. A lot of people are saying that this is a very Empire Strikes Back like movie, and I think it is. And it makes me wonder. It gives me hope that they're not going to ape Empire with Episode 8 because I feel like they aped the tone of Empire with this movie, and so I think that there is a signal being sent through this movie that they know that the 7 was New Hope, and they're not going to do Empire because this was Empire in its tone.
Nick, what are you gonna say?
Just shout out to the cast and crew. I mean, they did a great job. And
Sure.
I was just looking up his cinematographer because I thought it was shot pretty beautifully. Who was Greg Fraser? Well, never heard of him, but I'm sure he's done lots of cool stuff. Let's see. Zero Dark 30. Yeah, he's
I
badass.
loved the shots of they looked like GoPro action shots on the ships.
On the back of the ships.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's
there was a
cool, and
lot of really.
I brought this up to Kevin, and he was just like, do you think those were miniatures with cameras on them? I'm like, oh, maybe, because they had like a real physicality
Tactile,
to
yeah.
them.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's super sick.
Yeah, I thought there were just some. I think some of the cinematography in this is the best in any of the Star Wars movies by far. The shot of what we saw in the trailers that is still probably the best shot of any Star Wars film with the Star Destroyer coming out of the shadows as the sun's like creeping up.
Yeah,
We don't know
actually,
if
it was like, oh.
and then we see it. Then we see the scale for the first time of the Death Star, and you're like, "Fuck!"
And the eclipse too.
That was
They did
cool.
a lot
That
of
was
really
really
cool
cool.
stuff.
That
with
was
it.
really
There was a
cool.
lot of beautiful things in this movie, so I think they did a lot great. I mean, it's kudos to the team that worked on this. It's awesome.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think of Rogue One, a Star Wars story? Let us know in the comments below. Share the video with your friends. Of course, come back to the Game Over Greggy show either Friday on Patreon or next week when Gary Whittle will join us. Of course, he was one of the guys behind the story on this one. And until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you. And Watto should get his own movie.
Did you see the Maz Kanata look-alike? It might have been her.
It wasn't, sadly.
Might have been her.